Why, hello. It's an honor to be speaking at another Inside Bitcoins event. Thank you very much. I'll jump right into it. You don't have to. A year and a half ago, when I first was invited to keynote at the first global conference on Bitcoin in Amsterdam, I sort of got up and explained a bunch of philosophy. But I think now everybody gets the joke. Everyone gets the main event. This isn't really about Bitcoin per se. It's about unlike Al Gore, I was not around quite for the beginning of the internet, but I was around pretty close. And we all had an idea we were doing something as big as the Gutenberg Bible, the internet, early internet folks. Well, I have to say those who were involved in this, in the crypto movement and blockchain, understand it may be even bigger than the internet, if that doesn't sound too bombastic, in terms of its political implications. And that comes from the following fact. For 6,000 years of recorded human history, we've always had this decision to make when we enter consensual exchange, and that is, well, should we trust each other? I'm going to give you this camel, you give me a gold coin. But I don't know whether that gold coin has been debased or not. So there's a business model. There's a role for a central institution. It's really just a business model. And the business model is whoever has the monopoly on violence in that area, in that oasis, or in that region, the police power, will stamp his face on the coin and say, we'll use these to trade, and anyone who debases this gets killed. That's just a business model. It's a way to monetize one's police power, one's monopoly on violence. Lots of centralized institutions have grown, have encumbered civilization like barnacles over these 5,000 or 6,000 years. They have grown up to solve that problem with trust. Since you and I, in consensual exchange, if strangers can't trust each other, we'll have this central institution we each just trust. Land titling is another very deep one. And land titling, I think, I don't know, I've dropped this before because I'm not going to go work on it. I've been dropping this publicly for about 2 years. Land titling and property titling is an enormous opportunity for crypto. I'm going to talk about something, though, that makes people's eyes glaze over when you first really speak of it, and that's settlement. Settlement in a capital market. What is settlement? It sounds dry as dishwater, but I have to emphasize that, well, put it this way, and I guess we don't have sound unless some miracle has occurred in the last minute. But I'll tell you a story. In 2008, when the markets Chernobyl, Alan Greenspan was invited to address Congress in October, and he went before Congress. And he said this funny thing that gets quoted all the time, and especially on the left, people like this, because they say, oh, well, Greenspan said he shows markets don't work or something. Well, watch carefully what he says. Now, we have the quote written out, so the fact that there's no sound won't matter. There are additional regulatory changes that this breakdown of the central pillar of competitive markets requires in order to return stability, and particularly in the areas of fraud, settlement, and securitization. So those are the three things that Greenspan said was really what broke down under 2008. What's fraud? Fraud was Bernie Madoff. Securitization, that was the mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations, etc. But what's this settlement thing? Settlement, I'm going to walk you through some history that you may find instructive. First of all, settlement just names the process when an investor is buying some stock, the process where her cash is traded and the person with the stock sends the stock back. That's the process of settlement. That's what settlement means. Of course, we don't have grandmas talking to hedge funds directly. They're represented in the market by broker-dealers. And as they trade stock and cash, you can think of it this way, as going back and forth between them. But even that's really an oversimplification. By the way, can you hear me adequately? Okay. That's an oversimplification. What's really happens is you have, now going back in history up until this is the picture before the 1970s. What you had literally, and I was a little kid, I visited Wall Street in 1969, and I saw this. There were men on bicycles riding around Wall Street with sacks of burlap sacks over their shoulders with stock certificates. And they were running back and forth among the brokerage houses settling trades. And you have a client who bought 800 shares of IBM, and they bring over certificates and they sign it. There was this whole complicated process. What happened, they were called stock runners, or in Britain they call them stock jobbers. What happened in the 60s was volume in the American net capital markets quadrupled, and the guys on bicycles couldn't keep up anymore. And the whole thing vaporized in what became known as the Great Wall Street Paperwork Crisis. Now, this has essentially been forgotten history, but by 1971, Wall Street paper had logjammed. They were only open 4 days a week. They were only trading about 4 hours a day. The hours were curtailed. They were curtailed to 4 days a week, so the guys on bicycles would catch up. And in 1971, the SEC called a meeting of all the brokers. The whole industry got together to figure out how to solve this. They had two different strategies to propose. And what the industry wanted was a peer-to-peer system among the broker-dealers that would settle trades electronically. The other system proposed was called central counterparty clearing and immobilization, which had first been tried in the 1860s in Vienna, on the Bourse in Vienna. And how it works. Well, first of all, imagine that the people had said, you know what, let's introduce computers. We're going to computerize this, but the way we're going to introduce computers is we're going to have computers set the bicycle routes of the folks on bicycles. Presumably we would understand now that's not really that wasn't a really good smart use of technology. In a sense, that's what they did. Instead of using computers to create a peer-to-peer settlement system among the brokers, they created a system that works like this. They introduced central counterparty clearing, an organization called the DTCC. And so all the brokers don't have to know and trade directly with each other. They just have to know the DTCC, and that's the central counterparty. And they trade through it. And that central counterparty has now I'm going to teach you a dirty little secret. I mean, there's a saying on Wall Street that you never talk about religion, politics, or seedy and company. The seedy and company is this. There's a vault that stands behind the central counterparty clearing, which actually owns everything in America. All the stock, who here owns common stock in any publicly traded company? Okay, all of us with our hands up are incorrect. You actually have no property rights in any stock. Believe it or not, this sounds wacky. You can go look it up, but it is the dirty little secret that about 98% of all of corporate America is owned by a company you've never heard of. Literally, the legal ownership mechanism is Seedy & Company. It has all the shares and this vault. And out of these shares are created what's called share entitlements. You might just think of them as Polaroid snapshots of the shares. There's actually a physical vault. I won't tell you where it is. You can look it up yourself. But there's a physical vault where all the shares are. And that's not just a vault in the sense of it's deposited there. They actually have the legal ownership. And what's happened is these share entitlements are created out of those shares. It's almost like Polaroids are taken of the shares. Those are put into central counterparty clearing. The brokers get the money into the system, and what's happening as you trade stock is there's accounts where the share entitlements and the money move around within the DTCC. Now, again, the reality gets even more complicated because there's a few thousand brokers in the United States. There's about 100 or less who are actually wired directly into the DTCC. They are called clearing brokers. And then there's another couple thousand brokers who are wired into them in what's like a hub and spoke system within a hub and spoke system. Those are called referring brokers. And when you buy and sell stock, what's really going on is these share entitlements, which are not actually stock. And I mean, you legally don't own the stock. If you look in your brokerage statement, every brokerage statement in America has these, it's at the bottom upside down backwards in Greek, you are informed you actually have no ownership in any stock. What's happened is all the legal ownership has been reduced, is held by a company no one's ever heard of, and these share entitlements are generated out of them, and that's what moves through the system. And guess what? It turns out that there's a lot more slop in this system than anyone understood until the middle part of the last decade. That's not completely true. In 1986, NASDAQ hired a retired SEC commissioner, I think he may have been a judge, named Irving Pollack, who wrote a report that some intrepid journalist should go look up. And in that report, he said how flawed the system was, and there was no mechanism to prevent an unlimited amount of these, not actual shares, but share entitlements to start proliferating through the system. And that could be quite problematic under the right circumstances. Well, those circumstances came along in 2008, and what happened was the system began to vapor lock. And what really happened, I think, in 2008 was on that Wednesday morning in September, was they reached the point where the banks didn't know where they could accept counterparty risk anymore. And that's when the Treasury had to step in. So that doesn't look right to me. If you're familiar with my fight 10 years ago with Wall Street, which became somewhat famous, I looked at this and couldn't believe the design, couldn't believe there's huge amounts of latent derivative risk in the system that people did not understand was there 10 years ago. And that was really the basis of my fight. Now I should mention, just so you don't lose any sleep, that although I have been historically their fiercest critic, and there's never going to be any business between myself and the DTC. I have had, through this stuff that we're doing and we're talking about, and I'll be talking about in the next few slides, the opportunity to meet a lot of the current poobahs on Wall Street, including folks at the top of the DTCC. And I have to say I feel a lot better than I did 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, those folks didn't seem to have any idea of the risks built into the system, and now they do very much have that idea. Now, I say that not to curry favor, because I can assure you we're sort of lifelong enemies. But I do feel better, having met these people, that they understand a lot better than 10 years ago. They're actually sitting on a keg of dynamite if they don't watch themselves. So what would a better system be? Let's talk about true settlement. True settlement. Imagine grandma and her neighbor. They want to engage in a trade where he's got a baseball glove, she's got some money. As they trade, the baseball glove and money changes hands simultaneously. Call that true settlement. Imagine there was a ledger, and the money was being recorded in a ledger. We'll call it a space cash ledger, which is, I think, South Park's term. If you notice, a couple of years ago, they first started talking about space cash, because it could be beamed across the galaxy, the first form of cash that you could send across the galaxy. And let's say we could cryptographically protect this ledger so nobody could hack it. It'd be public and transparent. Now when grandma wants to buy the baseball glove, her money is on the ledger, and there's the neighbor's account, and he sends the glove over, and a coin is written out of grandma's and put inside the neighbor's account. Makes a lot of sense. It's a lot more like exchange as we understand it, and not that pig's breakfast I had on a couple slides ago of this crazy, people. Going back to this system for a second, the problem with this system is you don't own the underlying stock. What happens is CD and Company owns it. They've issued derivative claims against it to Node, which issues derivative claims against it, which issues derivative claims against them. What you really have is an IOU to an IOU to an IOU to a company that actually owns things. And on most days, that's not going to make a difference. On most days, that's going to work out, but some days it won't. And that's in part what 2008 was about. So under this system that I just described, true settlement, you actually could have, it wouldn't be all these daisy chains of derivatives. Now imagine true settlement in a environment with the hedge fund, and we're talking about stock and money. Now, when grandma goes to buy some stock from the hedge fund guy, you can imagine we're simultaneously taking a coin out of her account, writing it into his, and doing the same with shares of stock. So in that case, you're replacing that whole center of the national market system with a ledger such as I described. That's no longer just a theory. We did it, Overstock did it for the first time in this summer with a $5 million coin written on the blockchain, a bond that we sold to First New York, and we sold them a bond, a $5 million bond that was recorded in the blockchain. The virtues of crypto settlement are the transaction and the settlement are reunited. By getting rid of these daisy chains of ownership and what are essentially derivative claims against derivative claims, you're reuniting the trade and the settlement, just like when you're buying a baseball glove. Here's my money, here's the glove. That's consensual exchange. The virtue of which is, in that crazy system, there's all kinds of rooms for mischief. There's all this room for mischief, and that's really at the heart of what my big battle to expose what was going on Wall Street 10 years ago was, that I found was a whole bunch of mischief possible in those cracks. This system is transparent. It reduces frictional costs. We think 80%, maybe as much as 90%, to go to a ledger-based settlement system. It eliminates various kinds of settlement-based mischief in the system, of which there's which I assume anyone who hasn't been living under a rock since 2008 knows. Turns out was a whole bunch of mischief in the system. We have built a system that has been thoroughly tested, and I'm happy to announce, just on Friday, I think it was, the SEC declared a shelf offering of Overstock effective, which means they've approved this. What happened was Overstock bought a share in a node of Wall Street 9 months ago, and we funded the development. That node of Wall Street had a dark pool, had an ATS, and they put into the SEC to say they want to develop the capability to issue or to trade digital securities. And the SEC in concept approved it for them. Then Overstock we applied to the SEC to issue digital securities. And it's called an S3, it's a universal shelf. I'll go into more detail if you want. And we got that in April, and they quite understandably sent it back, saying you want to trade crypto securities. What is that? How will they work? And they have pages and pages of questions. We answered. They sent back a second round of questions. We answered. They sent back a third round. We answered. They sent back a fourth round. They answered. So I'm describing several $1 million of legal work, by the way. And as of Friday, they said, they sprinkled holy water on it. They said, this system's ready to go. We're good. That was public, if you were up on your SEC filings on Friday or Thursday, you would have seen that. But I don't know if anyone noticed it, although I think some fellow somewhere wrote a little blurb about it, figured it out, and then Wired magazine published a story about it an hour ago. But this is the first public revelation. This has all been approved by the SEC. We've got the green light. Now, for technical reasons, so Overstock has the green light to issue these securities, and this exchange that we bought some of and built some of has the green light to actually trade crypto securities. So we're ready to go. Now, as a matter of law, I cannot say, and I mean this, I have just theoretically, if I said, hey, we're going to go forward and do this, this whole thing would count as a securities offering, and the video would count as in. There's all kinds of legal problems. So for legal reasons anyway, I have to stipulate, I'm not making a securities offering to you, and I'm not saying we're going to do this. And I can't say this. All I'm saying is that we have now built the technology on both sides, both the system that can do trading in crypto securities, and we have built technically the crypto security that would be traded, and we've turned it all into the SEC. They've been studying it for months and months, and as of Friday, it's been blessed with holy water from the SEC. But whether we're going to issue something, I don't know. I'm actually, truth is, I'm trying to figure, and you might as well not ask me because I don't know. I'm trying to figure out this Christmas vacation, do we want to issue a security? What kind of security would we issue? Maybe there's other companies who just want to use this. We can take our boilerplate, give it to them, they can go through the SEC. And so now we have an alternative to that whole pig's breakfast diagram I put up earlier, that crazy system, a very clean, simple crypto system that is robust, and is ready to turn on to the world, start having other companies use it. And the virtue of building this within, buying a node of the national market system and building all our crypto efforts on top of it means that's already all plugged in now to the national market system. Anybody who's already in the national market system can now start trading these crypto securities once one company makes the decision to go forward and issue one. So this new company of ours, the code name we developed it all under was Medici, or Medici, but I'm in Utah too long, I remember also Medici, the Medici, but the go-to-market name is T0. And T0, Wall Street people here will understand what it means. Trades in the US settle on what's called a T+3 basis, meaning when you and I do a trade, I'm at E-Trade, you're at IBC or something, and we do a trade today, the trade doesn't actually settle in the back rooms for 3 days. We're on a T+3 system in this country. European countries are the T+2. Of course, there's no reason. This is all deliberate. There's no reason. It doesn't have anything to do with technology. It has to do with the interests of bankers.